The final whistle sounded, and for a few seconds, nobody moved. On one side of the pitch, players wearing one of football's most famous shirts stood frozen, staring at the scoreboard. On the other, a group that almost nobody expected to survive the tournament sprinted toward their fans, celebrating a victory that would be remembered for years. It wasn't supposed to happen. Not once. Not twice. And definitely not over and over again. The 2022 World Cup was expected to follow a familiar script. The biggest stars would dominate, the traditional favorites would march toward the final, and football's established powers would remind everyone why they ruled the game. Instead, the opposite happened. Argentina were stunned in one of the greatest upsets in World Cup history. Germany watched another campaign fall apart. Belgium's golden generation crumbled before the group stage was even over. Spain couldn't find a way past Morocco. Brazil celebrated too early. Portugal watched Cristiano Ronaldo's final World Cup dream disappear. Every few days, another giant fell. Every knockout round brought another shock. And with every upset, one uncomfortable question became impossible to ignore. Had football's biggest nations finally lost the safety they had always relied on? Because by the time the trophy was lifted in Doha, one thing had become painfully clear. FIFA's worst fear had just become reality. It started before most fans even realized something historic was about to happen. Messi! On November 22, 2022, Argentina walked onto the field against Saudi Arabia carrying a 36-match unbeaten run. Only one more game would have matched the all-time international record. Lionel Messi was playing what many believed would be his last chance to win the World Cup, and confidence around the Argentine camp couldn't have been higher. Just 10 minutes into the match, Messi calmly converted a penalty to give Argentina the lead. Everything was going exactly as expected. Then came a sequence that almost nobody noticed at first. Argentina kept finding the back of the net, but each celebration was cut short. One offside. Then another. Then another. 3 goals were ruled out as Saudi Arabia's perfectly timed defensive line kept catching Argentina by inches. Frustration began replacing confidence, and the favorites suddenly looked uncomfortable. The second half changed everything. In the 48th minute, Salah Al-Shehri slipped through Argentina's defense and fired a low shot past Emiliano Martinez. The Saudi supporters exploded. 5 minutes later, Salem Al-Dosari curled an unforgettable strike into the top corner. The green section of Lusail Stadium erupted while Argentine players looked at each other in disbelief. The final whistle confirmed one of the greatest upsets in World Cup history. Argentina had lost 2-1 to Saudi Arabia. Around the world, headlines called it a miracle. Fans wondered if Messi's World Cup dream had already ended before it had truly begun. But as shocking as that afternoon was, it wouldn't remain the tournament's biggest surprise for long. Just one day after Argentina's shock defeat, another former world champion stepped onto the biggest stage. Germany had every reason to believe this tournament would be different. 4 years earlier, they had crashed out in the group stage for the first time in their history. Qatar was supposed to be the response. Hansi Flick had rebuilt the squad, experienced leaders mixed with young talent, and the opening match against Japan looked like the perfect chance to erase the memories of 2018. For nearly an hour, everything followed the script. Ilkay Gundogan's first-half penalty gave Germany the lead, and they controlled possession with wave after wave of attacks. Chance after chance came and went, but the second goal never arrived. The Japanese players kept defending, waiting for one opportunity to change the game. Then their coach made a bold decision. Hajime Moriyasu introduced fresh attackers, and suddenly the match completely changed. In the 75th minute, Ritsu Doan reacted quickest after Manuel Neuer spilled a shot, smashing home the equalizer. The Japanese fans behind the goal erupted as Germany's players stood frozen, trying to understand what had just happened. 8 minutes later, the impossible became reality. Takuma Asano burst down the right side, held off his defender, and fired a powerful shot into the roof of the net from a tight angle. The stadium exploded. Japan's bench emptied onto the touchline while German players stared silently at the scoreboard. Another World Cup. Another opening match. Another collapse. And when Germany eventually exited in the group stage once again, It was no longer just Argentina's defeat making headlines. The giants were falling one after another. If Argentina's defeat was a shock, and Germany's collapse felt like history repeating itself, Belgium's exit looked like the end of an era. For nearly a decade, they had been called football's golden generation. Kevin De Bruyne, Eden Hazard, Romelu Lukaku, Thibaut Courtois, a squad packed with world-class talent that had reached the top of the FIFA rankings but never managed to win a major tournament. Qatar was supposed to be one last chance. Their campaign began with a narrow 1-0 win over Canada, but the result hid the truth. Canada created more chances, forced Courtois into crucial saves, and looked like the better side for long stretches. Belgium escaped with 3 points, but confidence was already beginning to fade. Then came Morocco. Inside Al Thummama Stadium, the atmosphere belonged to the Moroccan supporters long before kickoff. Every Belgian mistake was greeted with louder cheers. Every Moroccan attack raised the noise another level. For over 70 minutes, Belgium searched for control but never truly found it. Then Abdelhamid Sabiri stepped over a free kick near the touchline. His delivery flew through the crowded penalty area untouched before sneaking inside the far post. Courtois could only watch. Belgium pushed forward desperately, leaving space behind. Deep into stoppage time, Zakaria Abouklal finished a swift counterattack to make it 2-0. The Moroccan bench emptied onto the pitch while Belgian players stood with their hands on their hips, staring into the distance. The defeat wasn't just painful. It exposed cracks that had been hidden for years. Days later, Belgium were held to a goalless draw by Croatia and crashed out in the group stage. Some players left the field in silence. Others knew they would never play another World Cup together. But the biggest upset of the tournament was still waiting. By the time the round of 16 arrived, Morocco were no longer just another underdog. They had already topped a group containing Croatia and Belgium without losing a single match. But standing in front of them now was Spain, a team that had demolished Costa Rica 7-0 earlier in the tournament and looked capable of controlling any game through possession alone. From the opening whistle, Spain did exactly what they always did. Pass after pass. Move after move. The ball rarely left Moroccan territory, yet every attack ended the same way. A blocked shot. A misplaced final pass. A cross cleared away by a sea of red shirts. With every missed opportunity, the Moroccan supporters grew louder, sensing that their team was frustrating one of football's biggest names. 90 minutes weren't enough. Neither were another 30. As the match drifted into a penalty shootout, the pressure shifted completely. Spain's players walked toward the spot with tense expressions, while Moroccan goalkeeper Yassine Bounou stood smiling, waving to the crowd behind the goal. Then came the moment that changed everything. Pablo Sarabia struck the post. Carlos Soler saw his penalty saved. Sergio Busquets was denied again. 3 Spanish penalties. 3 failures. When Achraf Hakimi stepped up for Morocco's final kick, the stadium fell silent for a heartbeat. He calmly chipped the ball down the middle, sending Bounou one way and the ball into the net. The Moroccan players sprinted across the pitch in celebration. Some collapsed to the grass in tears. The crowd erupted into chaos. Spain's players stood frozen at midfield, their World Cup over without scoring a single goal. And with Morocco now in the quarter-finals, another football giant was about to discover that this tournament followed no script. Portugal arrived in the quarter-finals carrying a wave of momentum. Just days earlier, they had crushed Switzerland 6-1. The biggest surprise wasn't the score. It was the team selection. Cristiano Ronaldo had started on the bench, while 21-year-old Goncalo Ramos announced himself to the world with a stunning hat-trick. Suddenly, Portugal looked faster, freer, and more dangerous than ever. The same decision was made against Morocco. Once again, Ronaldo watched the opening whistle from the sidelines. Across the pitch, Morocco had already eliminated Belgium and Spain, but many believed this was where their incredible run would finally end. Instead, they kept writing history. Midway through the first half, Yehia Adiatala floated a high cross into the penalty area. Portuguese goalkeeper Diogo Costa hesitated for a split second, and Youssef En-Nesyri attacked the ball with perfect timing. Rising above 2 defenders, he powered a header into the net. Morocco led 1-0. The stadium erupted. Portuguese players immediately pushed forward, but Morocco defended every attack with relentless discipline. Every clearance was celebrated like a goal. Every tackle drew deafening cheers from the crowd. With little over 40 minutes remaining, Fernando Santos turned toward his bench. Cristiano Ronaldo was finally called. Every touch from the five-time Ballon d'Or winner raised the tension. He forced a save from Bonu, delivered dangerous crosses, and searched desperately for one decisive moment. But Morocco refused to break. When the final whistle blew, Portuguese players dropped to the turf in disbelief. Ronaldo walked alone down the tunnel, tears streaming down his face. His final World Cup had ended without the fairy tale ending millions had imagined. And while Portugal's dream was over, one final heavyweight was about to suffer the tournament's most heartbreaking collapse. Portugal arrived in the quarter-finals carrying a wave of momentum. Just days earlier, they had crushed Switzerland 6-1. The biggest surprise wasn't the score. It was the team selection. Cristiano Ronaldo had started on the bench, while 21-year-old Gonçalo Ramos announced himself to the world with a stunning hat-trick. Suddenly, Portugal looked faster, freer, and more dangerous than ever. The same decision was made against Morocco. Once again, Ronaldo watched the opening whistle from the sidelines. Across the pitch, Morocco had already eliminated Belgium and Spain, but many believed this was where their incredible run would finally end. Instead, they kept writing history. Midway through the first half, Yehia Adiatala floated a high cross into the penalty area. Portuguese goalkeeper Diogo Costa hesitated for a split second, and Youssef En-Nesyri attacked the ball with perfect timing. Rising above two defenders, he powered a header into the net. Morocco led 1-0. The stadium erupted. Portuguese players immediately pushed forward, but Morocco defended every attack with relentless discipline. Every clearance was celebrated like a goal. Every tackle drew deafening cheers from the crowd. With little over 40 minutes remaining, Fernando Santos turned toward his bench. Cristiano Ronaldo was finally called. Every touch from the five-time Ballon d'Or winner raised the tension. He forced a save from Bonu, delivered dangerous crosses, and searched desperately for one decisive moment. But Morocco refused to break. When the final whistle blew, Portuguese players dropped to the turf in disbelief. Ronaldo walked alone down the tunnel, tears streaming down his face. His final World Cup had ended without the fairy tale ending millions had imagined. And while Portugal's dream was over, one final heavyweight was about to suffer the tournament's most heartbreaking collapse. When the dust finally settled in Doha, one image kept repeating itself. Not the trophy, not the champions, but the faces of the teams that never expected to go home so early. Argentina survived after losing to Saudi Arabia. Germany were eliminated in the group stage for the second World Cup in a row. Belgium's golden generation disappeared without reaching the knockouts. Spain were stunned by Morocco. Portugal watched Cristiano Ronaldo's final World Cup end in tears. Brazil celebrated too early and paid the price. One by one, football's biggest names had fallen. Yet on the other side of the bracket, a different story was unfolding. Morocco became the first African nation ever to reach a World Cup semi-final. Croatia, with a population of less than 4 million, eliminated another tournament favorite through relentless belief and composure. Japan shocked Germany and Spain in the same group. Saudi Arabia handed the eventual champions their only defeat of the tournament. For decades, the World Cup had always produced surprises. But never like this. Never had so many established giants stumbled in the same tournament while so many underdogs refused to follow the script. Ironically, Argentina recovered from their opening disaster to lift the trophy, proving that even the champions were no longer untouchable. By the end of Qatar 2022, one message echoed far beyond the final whistle. No badge was too big. No reputation guaranteed survival. And perhaps that was the one thing football's biggest institutions never wanted to see: a World Cup where absolutely nobody could predict what would happen next. So what do you think? Was Qatar 2022 the most unpredictable World Cup ever played? Or will we see even bigger surprises in future tournaments? Let us know your biggest shock from the tournament in the comments below. And if you enjoy football documentaries that tell the story behind the biggest moments, make sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next one.